Everybody, it's Janelle and welcome back to Swanelle's Diary. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys what I read in June. And I know it's already June, but you may or may not know that I have started uni this year. So I've actually been doing a lot of reading for my uni courses, and I didn't want my monthly reading videos to just turn into my entire syllabus. I'm now on study break going into exam block. So this month I don't have any books I need to read for uni. So I have a selection of my own books that I want to read. Let's get into all the books that I'm currently reading. So it's the 1st of June today. Happy Pride Month, everyone. I also want to select an LGBTQ+ book to read for this month specifically. I'll probably be adding a book to this list later this month. The first book I have here is The Hobbit. This is actually my first time reading J.R.R. Tolkien. This book has been on my TBR for so long. I finally bought it. Where's my bookmark? Oh, I've just started it 2 days ago, so I'm currently up to page 30. And so far, I'm loving it so much. I can't believe I didn't read this earlier, but better late than never. Yeah, super excited to continue reading that. The next book I have here is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I actually had to read Orlando, a biography by Virginia Woolf for uni, and I just loved it so much. It was such a brilliant book, and that made me want to read more of Virginia Woolf's works. So I've also started reading A Room of One's Own. It's a very small book, as you can see. I've only just started a few pages of this, so excited to keep reading that. The next book I have here is The Rainfall Market, and this is the book that I have the most progress on so far. I am almost at the end. I am currently borrowing this book from my friend, and it just feels so cozy and so magical. I feel like this book would work so well as a Ghibli movie. To give a little overview, basically the Rainfall Market is this building that appears on the first day of the rainy season. And to enter, you need to write a ticket, and to get a ticket, you must write a letter of your misfortunes. The protagonist is a schoolgirl called Seren who is quite unhappy with her life. So she writes a letter in hopes of getting a ticket. When she does, she goes to the Rainfall Market to hopefully trade her life in for a different life. In the Rainfall Market, you can find these orbs that each contain a different life. And so Seren is trying to find the right life for her. Here are some of the places that are inside this Rainfall Market. There's a hair salon, a bookshop, a perfumery, a garden, a restaurant, a curiosity shop. Don't those just sound so fun? There's also a character guide at the front with a little illustration, and I just love that so much. So if you're looking for a cozy, magical realism read, then I would highly recommend this book. I'm also excited to see how it ends. Will Seren end up choosing another life? Oh yeah, and there is a catch. If she doesn't find her dream life in time, she will be trapped in this market forever. I'm really intrigued to see how the story ends. The next book I have here is a highly anticipated release of 2026 for me, and that is Lightfall, A Place Between. And this is the 4th book in the comic book series. If you do not know, I absolutely love this comic book series so much. I first got into it in, I think, 2022, purely because of how pretty the illustrations looked. And then I read the first book and I was like, wow, the story is also really good. I think I ended up reading the first and second book 3 times, and I've only read the 3rd book once because it just came out last year. I really love the 3rd book. And finally, it is time to read the 4th book, especially after that cliffhanger of an ending in the 3rd book. So excited to finally get this book. I started reading it yesterday at a sushi shop with my friend who's also a fan of this book. So that is why I've used a chopstick wrapper as the bookmark. So I'm currently up to page 32. Really excited to continue reading this book. The last book I have here is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This book I am almost halfway through. I am currently up to page 142, and so far I just love it so much. I've never read a book that explores the publishing industry, so this has been quite different to any book I've ever read. It follows the story of June Hayward, June Hayward and her friend Athena Liu are both authors. However, Athena Liu is just such a successful and famous author, and in the very beginning of the book, we are told that Athena Liu dies the night that she's celebrating her deal with Netflix. However, that same night before Athena dies, June is the first person to ever see or ever hear of Athena's manuscript that she has just finished the first draft of, and it's called The Last Front. Athena is very private in the first drafting process of her book, which is why June is the first person to ever hear of it. And she reads a bit of it and she realizes it's amazing, just like all of Athena's works. Because Athena has died before the world ever sees it, June decides to take it and edit it, add to it, and publish it as her own. I think June is a very complex, morally grey character, which is really interesting to see. And June Hayward, who used to be very unknown in the literary world, is now getting so much recognition for her new book, The Last Front. She also publishes it under the name Juniper Song to make her name seem more ethnically ambiguous. But the thing is, she thinks she's doing something good for her late friend Athena. If it wasn't for her, her novel would have never seen the light of day. Okay, I don't think I meant she thinks she's doing Athena a favor. I think I meant it more like she is trying to convince herself that she's doing Athena a favor so that she can create a new truth in her mind that goes her way instead of facing the reality of the situation. But at the same time, she does question whether it is right for her to sell this book as her own and make profit off a history that doesn't belong to her. And it really begs the question, who is able to tell certain stories? Does the same story and the same text change based on the person telling it? What is more important, the text itself and what it has to say, or the author's intentions? And that is all I'm currently reading right now. I'll see you guys later this month to give you guys updates. Hey guys, it is the next day and yesterday night I finished reading The Rainfall Market. I was kind of worried that the ending of this book would be kind of cliche, as in she realized that she didn't need any other life because her own life was the one for her, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I just wanted to be a bit surprised. And I was actually surprised by this ending and I quite enjoyed it. It was so sweet and wholesome and magical. I stand by what I said yesterday that this would be perfect for a Ghibli movie, and overall I would rate this 4.5 stars. Hey guys, it's been a bit of a time jump since it is now the 21st of June. I only just finished exams though. I am free and now I can tell you guys about the books that I finished reading. As you can see, I am a rainbow unicorn today because I wanted to practice my face painting now that exams are done. A week ago I did a face painting workshop, that is why. Okay, let's start off with the order that I finished these books. So the first one that I finished was Lightfall, A Place Between, and I just absolutely loved this book. Ending definitely wasn't as cliffhangery as the third book, but still it felt slightly more resolved, but I'm still intrigued as to what happens next. I feel like I didn't enjoy it as much as the other books because Bee and Cad spent a lot of time apart. Since the very beginning actually, they were separated by the shipwreck. I was feeling quite anxious for them, but overall I'd give this book 4.5 stars. I still really enjoyed it and I just love this series with all my heart. Okay, the next book I finished was Yellowface, and this book, it was amazing. A lot happened. I think it was about halfway through the last time I talked to you guys. Everybody was starting to find out about June's plagiarism, which isn't a spoiler because I think it says at the back. Yeah, but as evidence threatens June's stolen success, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves. The next book that she published, the first paragraph was literally taken from Athena or word by word. By then, everybody knew she was definitely plagiarizing. But then she argued that it was only the first paragraph and the rest of the book was entirely hers. And after ignoring her publishing company for a while, she finally talks with them and they're like, just own up to the fact that The Last Front was a co-writing project between you and Athena. Some of it is hers and some of it is yours, but you have to give credit to Athena. So that is where June definitely falls short, because yes, she put a lot of effort into writing The Last Front, and yes, she spent a lot of time and energy on that book. It wasn't entirely hers, and she doesn't want to give the credit where it's due. There was a character, I think her name is Candace, that used to work on her team. When Candace strongly suggests to June to get a sensitivity reader for The Last Front before they publish it, just to make sure nothing is culturally offensive or completely wrong, June is like, no, I'm pretty confident with my research. And then Candace is like, I don't know, even if you're confident with your research, I strongly suggest to have a sensitivity reader. And June was like, no, I'm quite sure I do not need one. And it was a lot of back and forth between them through email. And then finally June emailed someone else on the team, Daniela, I think her name was. But yeah, Candace ended up getting kicked off of the team. And then after that, on Goodreads, Candace ends up giving The Last Front a 1-star review as her kind of revenge. And when June exposed what Candace did, she basically lost her new job, and it became very hard for her to find any more jobs in the publishing industry. So now they have a lot of beef. Reading that, I was just really shocked that a Goodreads review can be so impactful career-wise. I feel like when I rate books, it's less of a criticism to the writing. It's just based on my personal experience with the book. And everyone has their own rating system. If I rate a book 3 stars, it doesn't mean I hated it. I still enjoyed it, but just not as much as some other books. In fiction, there are no books that are objectively good or bad. It is entirely subjective. And there may be a lot of complex reasons as to why a reader didn't enjoy a certain book, which have a lot more to do with themselves than the writing itself. I mean, I can recognize when I read books that certain books I know others would enjoy more than me, and that's completely okay. I think there is a book out there for everyone, but there is not a single book that can be for everyone. If you think of your favorite book and you think it's perfect, it's just everything you love, there is gotta be someone who doesn't like it. That is just how it is with books, and as an aspiring writer, I've kind of accepted that already. Like, if some people don't hate my book, then I'm doing something wrong. The books that are like, you either love it or you hate it are the ones that intrigue me the most. I feel like this might be one of them because I love it. I love being in June's mind and just seeing her thought process. So overall, I'd give this book also 4.5 stars. I'm also thinking, like, should I be rating books anymore if I want to be an author? I'm not judging the book or rating it based on how good I think the book is. It's just some books I connect with more than others, and that is going to be the same for everyone. Maybe people can tend to forget that when they are reviewing things, even if it's not a book, even if it's a movie or a show. Like, someone might watch a show and be like, why was this even made? This was terrible. But maybe it just wasn't made for them. Okay, but I would actually recommend this book if you're interested in the premise. I would recommend you give it a go. Okay, the next book absolutely broke my heart, by the way. They both die at the end. This is what I mean by some books you'll just connect with more than others. This book I connected with so much. This just meant so much to me and I loved it so much. This is also my LGBTQ+ book of the month. This is actually my friend's book as well, and my friend absolutely loves this book, and now I completely understand why, because I love it too. This book follows 2 characters, Rufus and Mateo, and if you couldn't already guess from the title, their fate is to both die at the end of this book. This entire book is set within a 24-hour period, because in this world they have Deathcast, which is basically an app that tells you if you're gonna die that day. It'll send you a notification and then a call, and then they basically tell you you're gonna be dying like sometime this day. And I thought it would be like 24 hours starting from the time that they received the notification, but it's actually 24 hours starting midnight of that day, which is really interesting. And contrary to what I expected, I feel like this book was a lot more about life and living than about death. Obviously, the notion of death is still a major part of this book. I love the way it explored life and purpose. This book just makes me feel even more excited to live Every time they talked about the future that they weren't gonna have just made me so sad. There's a huge difference between living fearlessly, like I've been doing, and knowing you have something to fear while you're out living. I can't even imagine just knowing you're gonna die that day. No matter where you go, there's no way to prevent it. Like, even if you stay at home all day tucked away in your bed, you're still gonna die that day, even if it's in your bed. Might as well just go out and live your last day to the fullest. Also, what surprised me was how many perspectives there were. I thought it was just gonna be Mateo and Rufus, the two main characters, but there were actually a lot more perspectives. And there were very brief chapters as well, like 2 or 3 pages. And it just worked so well. Like, at first, some of them I was like, okay, what does this have to do with the main plot? But then they all end up connecting together so well by the end. And I'm just like, Adam Silvera is a genius. I feel like I love this book the way that I loved Aristotle and Dante. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the World is one of my favorite books of all time. It just has that same kind of vibe of hope and freedom, even in circumstances of despair. Also just about friendship and love. This book made me feel so many emotions. I think when I finished it, I sat in my chair for an hour just thinking about this book. What? Bro is stupid. No. He left the hospital. That is not a good idea. What? Okay, it's been 15 minutes and I finally understood the end. It's because he was going to Althea Park, and who's at Althea Park? Delilah Gray. He walks onto the road and that's where his story stops. It's because that was Delilah's fiance was speeding to the restaurant at Althea because he just found out that his fiance has 2 hours left to live. He's like, okay, I need to go to Althea, and then he gets in his car and then he speeds there. Who is also going to Althea? Rufus, and he's walking there and he walks on the road. Crazy. And the day after I finished this book, I didn't read at all, which is crazy because I read every day. This book really did something to me. Anyways, of course this book is 5 stars for me. I'd probably rate it higher than 5 stars actually. It exceeds the scale. I'm also going to return it to my friend and she can see my annotations. Those are all the books that I finished within the past 20 days. So yeah. Hey guys, it is the 24th of June and I finished reading The Hobbit. Wow, what an adventure this book was. I loved it so much. The writing was just so beautiful and it was just so exciting to read. And before I read this book, I also posted a short video where I asked you guys what is something that I won't understand until I read this book. And some of the memorable comments for me was, what's in my pocket, and the Eagles are coming. And I just so want to do that kind of video again for the next time I'm reading a popular book, because it doesn't spoil anything about the book, but when I do read it and I get up to that part, it just makes me so excited because I'm like, I finally understand that quote and I finally know the significance of it. So if you are thinking of reading The Hobbit for the first time, something that I would tell you is, may your beard grow ever longer. Overall, I think I'd rate this book 4.7 stars. And I will definitely be reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy in the near future. I think my friend said she has the books, so I might be borrowing them from her. And also after reading this book, I have a new life dream, and that is to visit New Zealand and go to like the Hobbiton place. That would just be a dream come true. I would also highly recommend reading this book outside, which is what I did for a lot of this book. Also guys, I have an exciting announcement. I have released a zine and it's called Eudaimonia. Is suffering necessary for happiness? I've spent a lot of time towards this creative project, so it would mean a lot if you checked out the website in my bio. Maybe have a look and see if it interests you. Also check out my other short videos where I'm explaining more about my zine and what a zine is, if that's something that you're unfamiliar with. Also, another thing, thank you guys so much for 200 subscribers. I never expected my community to grow this big, so thank you to everyone who has subscribed and who has been watching all my videos. Please leave comments down below. Tell me a bit about yourself. I would love to get to know you guys more. I am still reading A Room of One's Own, by the way, so I will be updating you guys the next time I finish a book, which will be this one. So something that I did not realize before reading this book was that it's not only called The Hobbit, but it's actually called The Hobbit or There and Back Again. And that is exactly how Bilbo Baggins described his adventures, there and back again. Which I find so funny, and it actually reminds me of Mateo, and they wrote that at the end, said in a letter to his dad, "I love you from here to there." He didn't say I love you to the moon and back, I love you to, I don't know, somewhere really far and back. He said I love you from here to there. That was just really funny. Hey guys, it is the 30th of June and I have finished reading these two books. One of which I started reading 3 days ago, but firstly I'm going to talk about A Room of One's Own since I finished it a couple days ago. And although this is the shortest book of the month, I think it actually took me the whole month to read. It definitely surprised me because going into this I expected more of a short story, but I'd say it's more of an essay. At the beginning of the book, Virginia Woolf makes this claim that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. And the rest of this book is basically showing her thought process as to how she came to that conclusion. This book is told in first person and the narrator is never actually named. On the second page, she actually says, "Here then was I. Call me Mary Betton, Mary Seton, Mary Carmichael, or any name you please. It is not a matter of importance." I feel like this is a deliberate choice by Woolf because it suggests that the narrator of this book could be told by any woman. It's like the saying, the voice of one reflects the voice of many. I think a reason why it took me so long is because the pages are quite dense as well. Like some of them don't have any paragraphs. It's just a block of text. I also really enjoyed annotating this book because there were so many quotes that just stuck with me. There was one towards the end that really stood out to me. Here it is. It says, "The poor poet has not in these days, nor has had for 200 years, a dog's chance. A poor child in England has had little more hope than the son of an Athenian slave to be emancipated into that intellectual freedom of which great writings are born. That is it. Intellectual freedom depends upon material things. Poetry depends on intellectual freedom. And women have always been poor, not for 200 years merely, but from the beginning of time. Women have had less intellectual freedom than the sons of Athenian slaves. Women, then, have not had a dog's chance of writing poetry." This book just made me even more grateful for all the women before me. It is because of them that I have access to poetry and fiction, and the fact that I have the opportunity to write my own just feels like such a privilege. And I love the emphasis Woolf makes on intellectual freedom. Obviously there are financial needs, but there's also just freedom in general. Having a room and the freedom to write whatever you desire, that is a privilege. And also the conditions in which the woman lives play a big role in that as well. Overall, I'd give this book 4.5 stars, and I would definitely recommend reading this. Next up, we have Sunburn. And this book means everything to me. And the crazy thing is, I was never even planning to read this. It was not even on my TBR. I just came across it at the bookshop, which, I know, what was I doing at a bookshop? I saw the cover and I thought, it looks interesting, I'll read the back. I read the back and it sounded really interesting. So I was like, if this is less than $15, then I'll buy it. And it was fate because this book was $14. So anyways, I am so glad I bought it because within the first 2 chapters, I knew that I was gonna love it. I was enjoying every page. Also a coming of age story, which I always love. It follows this girl called Lucy and it starts when she is 15 years old. She grew up in this small Irish village called Crossmore. She has been raised to follow a conventional path, being raised in a family with very conventional values. This is also a sapphic book, which is perfect for Pride Month. It's also my favorite book of the month and one of my new favorite books of all time. That is how much I love it. Long story short, she falls in love with her best friend Susanna, and she's pulled between 2 very different pathways. One is being with Martin, who is her childhood best friend, and He is such a good person, by the way. Martin actually loves Lucy, and Lucy only wants to be with Martin to please her family and to keep ties with her friends and family, because she knows that if she were to be with Susanna, then her friends and family will no longer respect her and she will lose everyone except for Susanna. By the time she is 18 and graduating from school, she is put in such a difficult position when she's deciding which path to take. So devastating. I loved everything about it. I was getting so anxious because I really wanted her to get a happy ending, but then in the second half of the book, she became a lot more morally grey. The way she thought, I was like, Lucy, I cannot defend you anymore. She is hurting everyone who's fallen in love with her. See some clips of my reaction reading this in real time. This book is tearing me apart and I'm loving every minute. I'm nearing the end of this book and Lucy is feeling very stuck at this crossroad in her life, and I honestly have no idea what I would do in her position. It is just so difficult and I'm really anxious for her because I want everything to work out, except it's almost impossible for everything to work out. In one way or another, she will have to lose. Something that I love about this book is the letters between Susanna and Lucy. They are just the most intimate confessions ever. Like, every letter feels like a confession of their love over and over again. I think now, knowing how the book ends and where it goes, I now know that there isn't really a right or wrong decision for her to make. It's more like choosing Martin would be the tragic decision, because she will never truly be happy, and in the end she's also hurting Martin. It's very selfish because Martin does not deserve any of this. Martin is just such a sweet person. He's generally one of the best men I've ever heard about in real life and in fiction. He's just so gentle and kind and understanding. He deserves so much better. Also Susanna, she deserves so much better. Like, she was hurting so much. And I think especially in the first half of the book, I am so deeply engulfed in all of Lucy's thoughts. I kind of just tend to believe most of the things she says. But when I sit back and reflect upon what I've read, I realize that the way she has reasoned with herself upon making certain decisions is kind of just her trying to make it seem less selfish and painting herself in a better light, when what she's actually doing is just trying to convince herself that she is thinking of others, whereas I think it's mostly benefiting herself. And that is clearer for me to see when I see how she is hurting other people and the impacts of her actions. But she also does feel so much guilt. Throughout most of the book, something that I had constantly in my mind is, who is the antagonist of this story? And at first, I definitely thought it was her mum, because her mum's love for her seems very conditional. She will only love and respect Lucy if she follows a certain lifestyle and grows up to be the person that Lucy's mum wants her to be. And in situations like this, I feel like some people might picture Martin as the antagonist, especially when Susanna and Lucy were first falling in love and everybody, their friends and the people at school, also Lucy's family, were expecting Lucy and Martin to eventually date. And even if Martin wasn't as good of a person as he was, even if he was a bad person, I'd still argue that he isn't the antagonist in this case. Actually, unless he was actively trying to make Lucy's life worse, which he wasn't. In the end, I realized that the only person that was stopping Lucy from getting what she wants the most was herself. And so ultimately, Lucy is the antagonist and the protagonist of the story, because she knows what she wants. She knows what will make her happy. Yet everything she does is going against that and making it even more difficult for her to be happy. Something else about this book that I love is the way it portrays emotions. It just made me feel so much, especially in the beginning when Lucy is still 15. It just reminded me of what it was like to be 15. Even though that was only a few years back, it just really pulled me back into that time and it made me feel less alone. I'm actually really glad of the decision Lucy made towards the end of this book, not for Lucy's sake, but for the sake of myself as a reader because it really just opened my eyes. Before I read the ending, I wasn't sure what I would do if I was in her position. But now I realize the consequences of the decision she made. And I think it will actually help me with my own life and with my own fears of my identity. I annotated this book so much, and also something I did while annotating this book was underlining passages in this pink pencil because I just felt like it fit the book so well. There is this one quote that stood out to me, and I can't find it right now, but it went something like, if you would lose your family and friends over something like this, then did you ever really have them in the first place? And I think that quote was so important to show Lucy's situation, because when you think about, is it worth losing all of my family and my friends over one person that I love? Because did her family and friends ever really love her unconditionally if they will turn their backs on her over something like this? That was my thoughts. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend reading this. I would also recommend reading this during the summertime because it's a very summer book. I feel like that would just amplify the magnificent experience of reading this book. As for me, it is winter right now, so I was kind of reading this book in the opposite season. It's okay, I still loved it. Anyways, that is the end of my yap session for this book. And that is everything that I read this month. Let me know if you guys have read any of the books that I read this month. If not, let me know what books you guys read this month or what is on your TBR for next month. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.